I'm Maurice Morgan, 34, an emergency room nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. I'm known for my steady hands in a crisis, and for my inability to turn away from suffering, even when it costs me. The windshield wipers scraped against ice as I pulled into the driveway, their rhythm matching the nervous flutter in my chest. 3 years. 3 Christmas mornings I'd missed because of double shifts, because someone always needed me more than family did. This year would be different. I cut the engine and sat in the sudden silence, watching warm yellow light spill from the living room windows onto the snow. Through the frost-etched glass, I could make out silhouettes moving inside, my brother Jake's broad shoulders, my sister-in-law Carmen's animated gestures as she told some story that had everyone leaning forward. The sound of laughter drifted out, muffled but unmistakable. Then I saw her. Grandma Rose sat hunched on the front porch steps, her thin frame barely visible in the shadows between the porch light's reach. Her shoulders shook, not from laughter, but from cold. The red wool coat I'd bought her last year hung loose around her shrinking frame, and her breath came out in small, desperate puffs of white. My hands went numb against the steering wheel. Inside, someone clinked a glass. A toast, maybe. More laughter. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. I was out of the car before I'd fully processed what I was seeing. My boots crunched through the snow as I rushed toward her, my medical training kicking in automatically. Hypothermia. How long had she been out here? Grandma? I dropped to my knees beside her, my hands finding her face. Her skin felt like paper left in a freezer. What are you doing out here? Her cloudy eyes focused on me slowly, recognition dawning like sunrise. Maurice? My sweet girl, you came home. Her voice was barely a whisper, each word visible in the frigid air. Of course I came home. But why aren't you inside? It's Christmas morning. Something flickered across her face, shame, maybe, or fear. She glanced toward the warm windows where my family continued their celebration, oblivious to the woman freezing on their doorstep. They said I was confused again, making up stories about the old days. Carmen thought some fresh air might help clear my head. The words hit me like a physical blow. Fresh air. In 20-degree weather. For a woman with early-stage dementia who got disoriented when her routine changed. I helped her to her feet, feeling how her whole body trembled against mine. Her fingers were stiff, unresponsive. Frostbite was a real possibility. How long have you been out here? The clock chimed 11, I think. Or maybe it was 10. She leaned heavily against me as we made our way to the front door. Time gets slippery sometimes. An hour. Maybe 2. Long enough for serious damage. I didn't knock. This was still my childhood home, and I still had my key. The door swung open to a wall of warmth and the smell of cinnamon rolls and coffee. The Christmas tree dominated the corner, presents scattered beneath it in colorful chaos. My nephew Tommy was on the floor with a new remote control car, making engine noises as he crashed it into the couch legs. The conversation stopped when they saw us. Jake stood by the fireplace, a mug of something steaming in his hands. Carmen was curled in Dad's old recliner, her feet tucked under her. My parents sat on the couch, Mom's hand frozen halfway to her mouth with a piece of coffee cake. Maurice. Mom's face lit up. You didn't tell us you were coming. But her smile faltered when she saw Grandma Rose clinging to my arm, saw the way the old woman's lips had a bluish tint, saw the accusation that must have been written all over my face. She was outside, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Sitting on the porch. In the snow. Oh. Carmen's face flushed. She said she wanted some air. I thought. You thought what? I guided Grandma to the couch, gently displacing my parents. That a 90-year-old woman with dementia could regulate her own body temperature? That she'd remember to come back inside. Jake set down his mug. Maurice, you don't understand. She's been having episodes. Yesterday, she insisted it was 1962, and I kept asking where Grandpa was. She gets agitated when we try to correct her. I knelt beside Grandma, checking her pulse, her breathing, the color of her fingernails. Everything I'd learned in nursing school, Everything I did every day at the hospital focused on this one fragile woman who'd raised me when my parents worked double shifts to keep us afloat. So you put her outside? The words came out quieter than I'd intended, which somehow made them more dangerous. It wasn't like that, Carmen said quickly. She said she was hot, that she needed air. I just opened the door for her. I was going to check on her in a few minutes. A few minutes? I looked around the room at these people I'd called family, at the warm fire and the half-eaten breakfast and the presence that suddenly seemed obscene. She could have died. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Tommy's car made a mechanical whirring sound as it bumped against the wall. I stood up slowly, my hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. I looked at each of them. My brother who'd always been the golden child, my sister-in-law who'd never quite accepted that this house had been mine first, my parents who'd grown comfortable letting others handle the hard things. 6 words formed in my mind, 6 words that would change everything. I'm taking her home with me. Every face in the room turned pale. But as I helped Grandma rose to her feet, as I felt her fragile weight against my side, I realized something that made my blood run cold. In the pocket of her red wool coat, my fingers brushed against something that shouldn't have been there, something that meant this wasn't just neglect. Someone had planned this. The object in Grandma's pocket felt like ice against my fingertips, a small glass vial, half empty, with a prescription label that made my stomach drop. Haloperidol, an antipsychotic I knew well from the hospital, one that could cause severe confusion and disorientation in elderly patients when used improperly. The prescription wasn't in Grandma's name. I palmed the vial without anyone noticing, my mind racing through the implications. Someone had been drugging her. Someone in this room had been making her episodes worse, making her seem more confused, more burdensome. "Maurice, you're overreacting," Jake said, but his voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "She can't live alone anymore. We've been trying to tell you that for months, but you're never here." "Because I'm working." I kept my voice level as I helped Grandma into her boots, the vial burning like a coal in my palm. "Because someone has to pay for her medications, her doctor visits, the home health aid you all said was too expensive." Carmen shifted in the recliner. "We never said we couldn't help with costs. You said she should go into a facility." The words came out sharper than I'd intended. "Last time I was here, you had brochures spread across this same coffee table. Sunset Manor. Golden Years. Places where they warehouse people until they die." Mom finally spoke up, her voice small. "Honey, we're just worried about her safety. What if she falls? What if she wanders off?" I looked down at Grandma Rose, who was staring at the Christmas tree with a distant expression. For a moment, I wondered if she was having another episode. Then she spoke, her voice clearer than it had been all morning. "I know what they've been doing to me." The room went dead silent. Even Tommy stopped playing with his car. Grandma's eyes found mine, and I saw something there I hadn't expected. Not confusion, but clarity. Sharp, painful clarity. The pills in my orange juice. Making me sleepy, making my words come out wrong. "I tried to tell you on the phone, but you were always so busy." My heart stopped. The phone calls over the past few months, Grandma calling me at work, her speech slurred, her thoughts scattered. I'd attributed it to the progression of her dementia, had even spoken to her doctor about adjusting her medications. "That's ridiculous," Jake said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "She's confused. You know how she gets." I pulled the vial from my pocket and held it up. The prescription label was clear. Carmen Morgan. Haloperidol 5 milligrams. Take as needed for agitation. "Whose agitation?" I asked quietly. Carmen's face went white. My doctor prescribed that for my anxiety. Sometimes I get panic attacks." "This isn't for anxiety. I'd administered this drug hundreds of times in the ER. This is an antipsychotic. It's used for severe mental illness, or sometimes for elderly patients with violent dementia. But it can cause exactly the symptoms Grandma's been having: confusion, disorientation, difficulty speaking." The silence stretched until it felt like a living thing, coiled and dangerous in the warm room. "You've been drugging her," I said, the words falling like stones into still water, making her seem worse than she is so you could justify putting her away. That's not, Carmen started, but Jake cut her off. Enough. His voice was cold, authoritative. The voice he used at his law firm when he was closing a deal. You want to know the truth, Maurice? Fine. Yes, we've been giving her something to keep her calm. Do you know what it's like living with her? The constant questions, the same stories over and over. The way she follows Carmen around the house like a lost dog. She's grieving, I said. She's scared and confused, and she misses Grandpa. She peed herself at Tommy's school play. Carmen burst out, tears streaming down her face. In front of all the other parents. She kept asking where we were going, why all these children were singing. I was humiliated. I stared at her, this woman who'd married into our family 5 years ago, and somehow convinced everyone that her comfort mattered more than an old woman's dignity. So, you decided to drug her into compliance. We decided to make things easier for everyone, Jake said. Including her. She's happier when she's calm. She's not calm, she's sedated. There's a difference. I helped Grandma to her feet, feeling the way she swayed slightly. How long has this been going on? No one answered. How long? My voice cracked like a whip. 3 months, Mom whispered. Maybe 4. Carmen said her doctor recommended it, said it was normal for families to. Normal. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've been slowly poisoning a 90-year-old woman for 4 months, and you think that's normal? Dad finally spoke up from his corner of the couch. We were going to tell you. We knew you'd react like this. React like what? Like someone who took an oath to do no harm? Like someone who actually gives a damn about the woman who raised us. I was shaking now, adrenaline and rage coursing through my system like a drug. But underneath it all was something worse, guilt. How had I missed this? How had I been so focused on my job, on saving strangers, that I'd failed to save the person who mattered most? I'm taking her home, I said again, but this time it wasn't a declaration. It was a promise. You can't, Jake said. You work 12-hour shifts. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment. You can't give her the care she needs. I can give her something you obviously can't. What's that? Love without conditions. I was helping Grandma toward the door when she stopped, her hand gripping my arm with surprising strength. She turned back to face the room, and when she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. I remember everything, she said. Every pill you crushed into my juice. Every time you told people I was getting worse. Every conversation you had about me like I wasn't there. She looked directly at Carmen. I remember you telling your mother on the phone that you couldn't wait to get rid of the old bat. Carmen's face crumpled. Rose, I never. I may be old, Grandma continued, but I'm not stupid. And I'm not going anywhere with people who see me as a burden to be managed instead of a person to be loved. We were almost to the door when Jake's voice stopped us cold. If you take her, Maurice, you'll never see any of us again. Mom, Dad, Tommy, none of us. You'll be choosing her over your entire family. I turned back to look at him, this man who'd share my childhood, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my homework. This stranger wearing my brother's face. No, Jake, I said quietly. You already made that choice for me. I opened the door, and the cold air hit us like a slap. But as we stepped onto the porch, Grandma Rose squeezed my hand. There's something else, she whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. Something I found in Carmen's purse yesterday. Something that changes everything. Behind us, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps, and Jake's voice calling my name with a desperation that made my blood run cold. They weren't just trying to get rid of Grandma Rose. They were trying to kill her. I helped Grandma into my car as Jake's footsteps crunched through the snow behind us. My hands shook as I fumbled with the seatbelt, the weight of her whispered words settling like lead in my stomach. Maurice, wait. Jake reached my car just as I slammed the passenger door. You don't understand what you're doing. I turned to face him, and for the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own brother. Then explain it to me. His breath came out in sharp puffs, his lawyer's composure finally cracking. She's not, She's not going to get better, Maurice. The dementia is progressing faster than anyone told you. Her doctor says she has maybe 6 months before she needs full-time care. So, you decided to speed up the process? We decided to make her comfortable. But his eyes darted toward the house, where Carmen stood silhouetted in the doorway. The medication helps with her agitation. Haloperidol doesn't make people comfortable, Jake. It makes them compliant. There's a difference. I moved toward the driver's side, but he grabbed my arm. She found the insurance papers. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stopped moving, stopped breathing. What insurance papers? Jake's face was pale in the porch light. The life insurance policy Dad took out on her last year. $200,000. We're all beneficiaries. My vision tunneled. You're killing her for money. We're not killing anyone, but his grip on my arm tightened. The medication just helps her along. Makes the transition easier for everyone. I jerked away from him, my nursing training warring with the urge to put my fist through his face. You're slowly poisoning a 90-year-old woman for an insurance payout, and you're telling me it's mercy? She's going to die anyway. The words exploded out of him. In 6 months, maybe less, she'll be a vegetable in some nursing home, draining what's left of her savings and ours. This way, she goes peacefully, at home, surrounded by family. This way, you get rich. From inside the car, I heard Grandma Rose's voice, thin but determined. Maurice, we need to go.
Now.
I looked back at the house and saw Carmen on the phone, her face animated with panic. Mom and Dad stood behind her, their faces masks of confusion and fear. Who's she calling? I asked. Jake's silence was answer enough. I was in the car and backing out of the driveway before he could stop me. In the rearview mirror, I watched my childhood home shrink away, watched Jake standing alone in the snow like a scarecrow in a dead field. Where are we going? Grandma asked as I turned onto the main road. Somewhere safe. But even as I said it, I realized I didn't know where that was. My apartment was the first place they'd look. The hospital would ask too many questions. And if Carmen was calling the police, claiming Grandma was confused and I was kidnapping her. The cabin, Grandma said suddenly. Take me to your grandfather's cabin. I'd forgotten about the old hunting cabin up in the mountains. Grandpa had built it himself in the 1960s, a simple 2-room structure with no phone, no internet, just a wood stove and a well. He'd left it to Grandma in his will, but no one had been there in years. Grandma, it's December. There's no heat, no electricity. There's firewood. And I know where he hid the spare key. Her voice was stronger now, more focused. It's the one place they won't think to look. She was right. Jake had always hated the cabin, called it a waste of money and time. Carmen had never even seen it. The drive took 2 hours through winding mountain roads that grew progressively more treacherous as we climbed. Snow fell steadily, and I had to use my phone's flashlight to find the narrow dirt road that led to the cabin. My car wasn't built for this terrain, but somehow we made it. The cabin sat in a small clearing, looking exactly as I remembered it from childhood visits. Weathered wood siding, a stone chimney, windows dark as empty eyes. It looked abandoned, forgotten, perfect. I helped Grandma out of the car, and she moved with surprising confidence through the snow to a loose board near the foundation. Her fingers found the hidden key like muscle memory. Inside, the cabin smelled of dust and old wood and something else, something that reminded me of Grandpa's pipe tobacco. Grandma moved through the darkness like she could see, her hands finding the oil lamps, the matches, the kindling box beside the stone fireplace. You remember, I said, watching her light the first lamp. I remember everything that matters. She settled into Grandpa's old rocking chair while I built a fire. The question is, what are we going to do about what I found? The fire caught, casting dancing shadows on the cabin walls. In the warm light, Grandma looked more like herself than she had in months, alert, determined, dangerous. Tell me, I said. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I found this in Carmen's purse yesterday when she left it on the kitchen counter. I was looking for a tissue. I unfolded the paper and felt the world tilt sideways. It was a printout of an email exchange between Carmen and someone named Dr. Richard Holbrook. The subject line read, "Accelerated Timeline, Rose Morgan." My hands shook as I read. Carmen, as discussed, increasing the dosage to 10 milligrams twice daily should produce the desired effect within 2 to 3 weeks. The combination with her existing heart medication will appear natural. No autopsy will be ordered for a 90-year-old with documented dementia. Payment as agreed. RH. Carmen's response was even worse. Perfect. Jake is getting impatient, and the holidays are the ideal time. Family gathered, emotional stress, etc. Will increase dosage starting Christmas Eve. Thank you for everything.
CM.
I read it twice before the words fully sank in. They weren't just drugging her to make her compliant. They were planning to kill her on Christmas Day, in front of the whole family, and make it look like natural causes. How long have you known?
I asked.
I found it 3 days ago. I tried to call you, but you were at work. Then I tried to flush the pills down the toilet, but Carmen caught me. That's when she started putting them directly in my orange juice instead of just leaving them on the counter. The fire popped and hissed, filling the silence between us. Outside, the wind howled through the trees like something wild and hungry. "We have to call the police," I said. "With what proof?" The email could be fake. The pills are prescribed to Carmen. And who are they going to believe? A confused old woman with dementia, or a respected lawyer and his wife? She was right, and we both knew it. Jake had connections throughout the county. Carmen volunteered at the hospital where I worked. They were pillars of the community, while I was just a nurse with a history of working too much and caring too little about family obligations. There has to be something. There is. Grandma's eyes glinted in the firelight. But you're not going to like it. She told me her plan, and she was right. I hated every word of it. It was dangerous, possibly illegal, and almost certainly going to destroy what was left of our family. It was also the only way to save her life and expose the truth. "Are you sure about this?" I asked when she finished. "Maurice, I've lived 90 years on this earth. I've buried a husband, raised children, survived the Depression and 2 wars. I'm not going to let some greedy children kill me for insurance money." She reached across and took my hand. "But I can't do it alone." I looked at this woman who'd bandaged my scraped knees and taught me to bake cookies and held me when my first boyfriend broke my heart. This woman who'd worked 2 jobs to help pay for my nursing school and never once asked for anything in return. "What do you need me to do?" She smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the grandmother I remembered from childhood. Fierce, loving, unbreakable. "Help me die." The plan was simple in its audacity. We would return to the house tomorrow, Christmas evening, when the family gathered for dinner. Grandma would take the pills Carmen gave her, but not before palming the antidote I would prepare, a combination of medications that would counteract the haloperidol and make her appear to have a heart attack. I would try to save her, using my medical training to make it look real. When she died, I would insist on an autopsy, claiming something seemed wrong. The toxicology report would reveal the haloperidol, and the email evidence would do the rest.
It was risky.
If I miscalculated the dosage, if the timing was off, if any of a dozen things went wrong, Grandma Rose could actually die. But if we did nothing, she would die anyway, slowly, painfully, and alone. "There's one more thing," she said as we settled in for the night, the fire burning low in the grate. "Something I never told anyone, not even your grandfather." I waited. "I have a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Inside is a letter I wrote 20 years ago, detailing everything I know about this family's secrets. Jake's gambling debts that your father covered up. Carmen's affair with her tennis instructor. Your mother's drinking problem that everyone pretends doesn't exist." Her eyes met mine across the dying fire. I was saving it for insurance, in case anyone ever tried to hurt me. "Grandma, if something goes wrong tomorrow, if the plan fails, I want you to get that letter. Use it to protect yourself. Because once we do this, there's no going back." I nodded, understanding the weight of what she was offering me. Not just her trust, but her arsenal, A lifetime of carefully collected secrets that could destroy everyone we'd ever loved. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering our tracks, burying the evidence of our passage. In a few hours, we would drive back down the mountain and into the heart of a family that wanted one of us dead. But for now, in the warm circle of firelight, with my grandmother's hand in mine, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. I felt like I was home. The next evening, as we pulled into the driveway for what might be the last time, Grandma Rose squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens," she said, "remember that love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it has to be fierce." I looked at the house where I'd grown up, at the warm lights and the Christmas tree visible through the window, at the family that had chosen money over mercy. "I'll remember," I promised. And as we walked toward the door, toward the confrontation that would either save her life or end it, I realized that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't peace. Sometimes it's justice. The door opened before we could knock, and Jake's face appeared in the golden light, his expression a careful mask of relief and concern. "Thank God you're back," he said. "We were so worried." Behind him, Carmen stood with a glass of orange juice in her hands, and I knew our time had run out. The final act was about to begin.